The hiss of the grill was loud, but not loud enough to drown out my mother's voice as it cut through the backyard like a blade. "Hey, Rebecca," she called, letting the syllables drag. "Since you are staying under my roof, you are old enough to start paying for it. This is not a charity. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where you are watching from. And after you hear the whole story, tell me what you would do in my place. Be honest, we read every comment. Let's begin." Laughter rose like smoke. My mother, Evelyn, lifted her glass and smiled at the neighbors who pretended not to listen. Lila, my younger half-sister, leaned back in a lawn chair and tapped her nails against the can of sparkling water she did not buy. Rick, my mother's boyfriend, flipped a tray of burgers like he owned the place. Caleb, my 10-year-old son, stood beside me with a paper plate of corn and a question in his eyes that made my stomach knot. I set our plates on the picnic table and kept my voice steady. "I already pay, Mom. Groceries, repairs, the internet, half the utilities, that fence you bragged about to your friends. I paid for that too." Evelyn's smile sharpened. "That is called being a family. If you do not like it, you and Caleb can find another place to live." Heat rolled off the grill, thick with the scent of char and something meaner. A few cousins turned away. The neighbors looked down at their shoes. Layla smirked over her straw. "Find somewhere else," she said, soft enough to sting. "With what money, Rebecca?" The question did not surprise me. It used to shame me. Not today. I had learned to count my yeses and my nos like lifelines. I had learned to breathe through the sharp edges of her voice. I had also learned to keep a secret. I looked at Caleb. He was trying to stand taller, like he could block wind with a spine. "We are fine," I told him softly. Then I stepped closer to my mother so the grill's flicker washed her smirk in orange light. "You want me gone?" I said. "You will get your wish." Rick laughed and lifted the spatula like a gavel. "And where are you going to go, sweetheart? Your clinic paycheck?" "Buy you a castle." Evelyn waved him off. "Enough. We have guests. Rebecca, be polite and stop making a scene." I swallowed the taste of smoke and said nothing. Because the truth was simple. For months, I had worked extra shifts at the community clinic. I had skipped new shoes and birthday dinners. I had saved every dollar that did not belong to Caleb's school lunches or a bus pass or a doctor's copay. Yesterday, I had signed a stack of papers with my name printed in black. This morning, a set of keys had rested warm in my palm. The evening blurred into forced small talk and whispers that thought I could not hear. But inside me, something clicked into place like a lock turning. When we left this yard, we would not be coming back. And when I walked away, I would not just carry boxes. I would carry the weight they had handed me for years, and I would set it down. By the time the sun came up the next morning, my mind was already made. The air outside was still cool, the kind that smells faintly of wet grass and quiet possibilities. Caleb was sitting at the kitchen table, eating cereal in his pajamas, when I slid the 2 shiny brass keys across to him. "What's this?" he asked, blinking sleep from his eyes. "Our new beginning," I said. He tilted his head, unsure if it was a joke. I opened the folder I had kept hidden in the back of my closet for months. The mortgage papers, the bank statements, the inspection report. All in my name. No co-signers. No one to yank it away from me when they got bored or angry. The townhouse wasn't big, but it was ours. 2 bedrooms, a little patch of yard, and a front porch with peeling white paint I already knew Caleb and I would repaint together. It sat on a quiet street where the only noise came from wind chimes and the occasional bark of a dog behind a fence. We moved in one trip. Most of our belongings had been reduced to what could fit in my hatchback. I had learned a long time ago that the fewer things you have, the less people can use them to keep you in place. By 9 a.m., the last box was stacked inside the living room of our new home. Caleb's eyes were wide as he peeked into every corner, as if making sure it was real. "We're really not going back?" he asked. "Not unless we're invited," I said, though I already knew the only invitations from that house came wrapped in strings. Before we left Evelyn's, I'd turned off my automatic payments for the electric bill, gas, internet, water, all the things I'd been quietly covering for years. Those accounts were now in Evelyn's name, where they should have been all along. At noon, I sent a text. "We've moved. All bills are your responsibility now." No explanation, no apology. It didn't take long. By 1 o'clock, my phone lit up with Evelyn's number. I let it ring. Rick's name followed. Then Lila's. I didn't answer a single one. I wasn't ready to let their voices crawl back into my head. Not today. Today, the only sounds I wanted were Caleb's laughter echoing in the empty rooms and the creak of our own floorboards under my feet. Standing in the middle of the living room, I felt something I hadn't in years. Not relief, Nyayo. Not yet. But freedom. Raw and trembling. Like a bird that had finally learned the cage door was open. I didn't know how they'd react when they realized what I'd done. I only knew one thing. Whatever storm was coming, I was ready to meet it on my own front porch. The knock came just after sunset, loud enough to rattle the front door. Caleb was curled up on the couch with a comic book, but he looked at me like he already knew who it was. Through the narrow pane of glass beside the door, I saw them. Evelyn in her too bright floral blouse, Rick with his arms crossed over his chest, and Lila in a cropped jacket, scrolling on her phone like she was bored already. Their shadows stretched long in the porch light. I opened the door halfway, keeping my hand on the frame. "What do you want?" Evelyn's voice was syrupy sweet, the way it always was right before it curdled. "We just came to talk. You didn't need to run off like a thief in the night. If you wanted space, you could have said something." I almost laughed. "I did say something. You said pay rent or get out, I got out." Rick took a step forward. "You didn't just get out, Rebecca. You cut off every account. No lights, no heat, no internet. You know your mother can't handle all that right now." "Funny," I said, leaning against the frame. She seemed pretty confident in front of the whole neighborhood yesterday. Lila finally looked up from her phone. "You're being dramatic. We just need you to put the bills back in your name for a month while we sort things out." "Not my problem," I said. Evelyn's smile thinned. "Don't do this. Family is supposed to help each other." I felt my jaw tighten. Family doesn't laugh at you in front of strangers. Family doesn't use you like an ATM and call it love. Rick shook his head and muttered something under his breath about me being ungrateful. I stepped forward just enough to make him stop. "If you come here to insult me, you can leave." Evelyn's eyes darted past me into the living room. "You're not even going to let us in?" "No," I said flatly. "You don't live here. You're not welcome unless invited." For a moment, no one spoke. The porch light hummed above us, and somewhere down the street a dog barked. Evelyn's face hardened, the sweetness gone. "You're going to regret this." "Maybe," I said, "but not tonight." I shut the door and turned the deadbolt. Through the glass, I watched them stand there a moment longer before walking back to their car, their voices low and sharp. Inside, Caleb's eyes were wide. "Are they mad?" he asked. "Yes," I said, sitting beside him. "And they'll probably get madder. But we're safe. That's what matters." Even as I said it, I could feel the tension crawling under my skin. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. 3 days passed before the next crack appeared. It was a Wednesday morning, and I was finishing patient intake reports at the clinic when my phone buzzed with an email notification from my bank. Subject: Suspicious activity on your account. I clicked it open, my stomach tightening. Someone had tried to open a store credit card in my name the night before, using my old address at Evelyn's house. The application had been denied because my credit freeze had blocked it. For a moment, I just stared at the screen. The details were too familiar. My full legal name, my date of birth, the exact spelling of my address from before I moved. Information you couldn't guess unless you had my ID in your hands at some point. And then I remembered. Last year, my wallet had gone missing from my room. 2 days later, it turned up on the kitchen counter with nothing missing. Or so I'd thought at the time. I told myself I was being paranoid, that maybe I'd misplaced it. Now I knew better. I took my lunch break early and drove straight to the bank. The manager recognized me from years of transactions and led me to her office. I explained the fraudulent application and requested a printout of the attempt. She slid the paper across the desk, the black ink crisp and undeniable. "You should file a police report," she said. "Identity theft can spiral fast if you don't get ahead of it." I nodded, but inside my thoughts were already turning over. I didn't have proof of who did it. Not yet. But the circle was small, and every name in it lived under Evelyn's roof. Back at home, I pulled out the heavy black folder I'd labeled in thick marker, protection. Inside were my mortgage documents, screenshots of past text exchanges, and receipts showing every bill I'd paid for that house. I slid the new bank printout into a clear sleeve. Caleb came in from the kitchen, chewing on an apple slice. "What's that?" "Something to keep us safe," I said, closing the folder. That evening, my phone pinged with a text from an unknown number. "You think you're better than us now? Watch your mailbox." No name, no emojis, just the kind of message meant to unsettle. But instead of fear, I felt something colder, a steady resolve hardening in my chest. They weren't just angry that I'd left. They were angry because they were losing their grip. And the more control they lost, the more reckless they would get. I picked up a pen and wrote the date, time, and exact wording of the message on a fresh page in the folder. Every interaction, every attempt would be documented from now on. Because this wasn't just about walking away anymore. It was about building a wall high enough that they could never climb over again. And if they kept pushing, I would make sure there were consequences waiting on the other side. By Friday, Evelyn had shifted tactics. Instead of calling or texting me directly, she turned to the one weapon she knew how to wield best: public image. It started with a Facebook post that afternoon, dripping with her trademark vague self-pity. Funny how some people forget who fed them and kept a roof over their heads. Some of us are left in the dark now, literally. I didn't need to see the comments to imagine them. Old family friends clucking their tongues, distant relatives offering sympathy, neighbors pretending they knew the whole story. And of course, no one tagged me. She wanted to shape the narrative without giving me a chance to speak. A few hours later, a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years sent me a message. "Is everything okay with your mom? She said you left her without power." I ignored it. I'd learned the hard way that defending myself in public only fed the drama. Instead, I opened my laptop and went through my checklist. Electric bill. Confirmed in Evelyn's name. Gas. Switched over. Internet. Transferred. Water. No longer mine. They had no financial leash on me anymore. That evening, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Mrs. Patterson, an older neighbor from my old street. She lowered her voice like she was telling me a secret. "I don't mean to stir the pot, Rebecca, but I thought you should know. I heard them yelling in the driveway today. Your mother said she couldn't buy groceries because the bank account was empty. Rick blamed her for wasting money, and she blamed him for not getting a job." I thanked her and hung up, but I sat there for a long time afterward, the weight of her words pressing into me. For years, I had carried their chaos on my back, paid bills that weren't mine, covered debts I didn't create, kept the lights on while they used my paycheck to keep their wine cabinet stocked. Now, for the first time, they were feeling the pressure without me propping them up. Part of me wanted to savor that image, Evelyn, Rick, and Lila turning on each other the way they used to turn on me. But another part, the quieter part, knew that cornered people didn't just sulk. They lashed out. At dinner, Caleb asked if we could paint his new bedroom walls blue. I promised we would, all the while keeping my smile steady so he wouldn't see the tension under it. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't just petty resentment anymore. This was the stage where desperation began to take root. And desperation had a way of making people dangerous. The email landed in my inbox on a quiet Tuesday morning while I was sipping coffee at the kitchen table. The subject line made my chest tighten. Urgent, past due mortgage payment, notice of public auction. For a split second, I thought it had to be a mistake. I didn't live at Evelyn's anymore. I'd scrubbed my name off every account tied to that address. But when I opened the email, I saw why it came to me. I was still listed as an emergency contact from years ago. The letter was blunt. 2 mortgage payments missed, no arrangements made, auction scheduled in 30 days. I stared at the words, letting their meaning settle in. In the past, this would have sent me racing to their house with a check in hand. I would have drained my savings, promised myself I'd recover later, and told Caleb we'd cut back for a while. That reflex, the one they'd relied on for years, flickered inside me, but I shut it down. Instead, I hit print. The paper slid warm from the printer into my hands, black letters stark against white. Proof. Not just of their trouble, but of the reality they'd worked so hard to hide. I slipped it into my protection folder, behind the bank fraud documents. By noon, I heard it, the pounding at my front door. I didn't have to look at the camera feed to know who it was. I stepped outside, closing the door firmly behind me. Evelyn stood at the bottom of the porch steps, arms crossed. Rick hovered at her side, his face flushed. Lila leaned against their car, chewing gum like she was watching a show. "You saw the notice," Evelyn said without preamble. "We can't lose the house, Rebecca. You're going to help us fix this." I folded my arms. "No, I'm not." Rick's voice rose. "We're still family, damn it." I met his glare. Family doesn't laugh while humiliating you in front of neighbors. Family doesn't use your paycheck like their personal fund. Family doesn't commit fraud in your name. Evelyn glanced toward the houses across the street, where curious eyes peeked from behind curtains. "Do you have to make a scene?" "Yes," I said flatly, "because you had no problem making one when it suited you." Lila muttered something under her breath, unbelievable. And I turned to her. "You're right. It is unbelievable that I let this go on for so long." Evelyn's voice dropped to that low, warning tone she'd used on me as a kid. "If you walk away from this, you'll be nothing to us." I smiled, slow and steady. "Then I'll be nothing to you and everything to myself." I stepped back inside, letting the door click shut behind me. Through the blinds, I watched them stand there, speechless, before retreating to their car. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the one left standing in the cold. 3 days later, the simmering tension snapped. It was just after lunch at the clinic when my coworker Mara leaned across the break room table and lowered her voice. "You're not going to like this," she said. "I was at the pharmacy on Maple this morning, and I overheard your sister—" She paused, grimacing, bragging to a friend about getting even with you. Something about teaching you a lesson so you come crawling back. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. "What exactly did she say?" Mara hesitated. "That you wouldn't know what hit you. And that Rick's got connections who can make problems go away." It sounded like trash talk, but still. A cold, steady anger settled in my chest. I thanked her and finished my shift, my mind already sifting through every possible meaning behind those words. That evening, after Caleb had gone to bed, I stepped outside to bring in the mail. Tucked between utility flyers and a grocery coupon booklet was a plain white envelope with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with blocky handwriting I recognized instantly. Lila's. "Hope your little house is insured." Things happen, no signature, no explanation. Just the kind of threat meant to live in your head rent-free. I didn't slam the door or call them in a rage. Instead, I went straight to the kitchen table, pulled out my protection folder, and added the note to the growing stack. Bank fraud attempts, screenshots of harassing texts, the foreclosure notice. Every page was another brick in a wall they wouldn't be able to climb. The next morning, I made an appointment with a lawyer whose office sat above the coffee shop on Pine Street. He was in his late 50s, with the kind of calm voice that made you feel like you were already safer just by sitting across from him. I laid the folder on his desk. "I don't want contact. I don't want mediation. I want them to have no way to touch me or my son ever again." He flipped through the evidence slowly, his eyes narrowing at the forged credit application and the threatening note. "You've got enough here to pursue charges for identity theft and harassment," he said, "and we can file for a restraining order. That'll keep them off your property." For the first time in weeks, I felt my shoulders ease. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about ending the cycle. As I left his office, the late afternoon light stretched long across the street. I passed the coffee shop's window and caught my reflection. Tired, yes, but steady. I'd spent years reacting to whatever Evelyn, Rick, or Lila threw at me. Now, I was the one making the next move, and they wouldn't see it coming. 3 weeks later, the ripple of their collapse reached me without a single word exchanged. It started with a post in a local real estate Facebook group. 3-bedroom home on Birch Avenue sold at auction. Former owners vacated last week. The address was Evelyn's. I didn't celebrate out loud. I just sat at my kitchen table, coffee in hand, letting the quiet sink in. They were gone from that house, forced into a cramped second-floor apartment on the other side of town. No yard, no porch, no neighbors to impress. A week after that, my lawyer called. The police had opened an investigation into the fraudulent credit card application. They'd traced the attempt back to a device in Evelyn's house, Lila's laptop specifically. She was now facing charges for identity theft, and part of the evidence was the threatening note she'd left in my mailbox. "Do you want to push for prosecution?" my lawyer asked. "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Actions have consequences." I didn't hear from Evelyn, Rick, or Lila directly after that. But through the grapevine, a neighbor here, a cousin there, I learned that Evelyn was telling anyone who would listen that I'd destroyed the family over money. The difference now was, I didn't feel the need to defend myself. People who mattered knew the truth. The rest could believe whatever story made them comfortable. One Saturday morning, I posted a single line on my own social media. Sometimes the best gift you can give someone is the chance to stand on their own 2 feet. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't need to. Caleb and I spent the rest of the day painting his bedroom walls a rich ocean blue. We got more paint on ourselves than the roller, but by the end of the afternoon, the room felt like his. Really his. He grinned when we pushed his bed against the wall and set his lamp on the nightstand. "Feels like home," he said. "It is home," I told him, "and no one can take it from us." Later that night, after Caleb had gone to bed, I stepped onto our porch. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of jasmine from a neighbor's garden. For the first time in years, I inhaled without feeling like I owed someone for the air. I thought about all the years I'd spent under Evelyn's roof, convinced that keeping the peace was worth any sacrifice. I thought about the way I used to second-guess every decision, afraid of being labeled ungrateful. And I thought about how none of that fear had followed me here. Because walking away hadn't made me heartless. It had made me whole. Moral lesson: family is more than blood or last names. It's trust, respect, and mutual care. When those things are missing, the bond becomes a chain. And the only way to save yourself is to break it. Setting boundaries isn't cruel. It's necessary. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself and your child is to close the door on people who only take, even if they share your DNA. I turned off the porch light, went inside, and locked the door. Not out of fear, but out of choice. And for the first time, I knew the lock was mine.